Okay, hello again. It's the end of April 2019, and if I can remember how, I'm going to make a video. I actually have another 3 or 4 ideas, so you can expect a few videos over the next few days. And this one is called Don't Learn Tarot Card Meanings, although maybe it should be called, or the subtitle would be, you can waste an awful lot of time if you learn card meanings. So do this instead. And what you do is, instead of learning meanings, which can be very difficult to connect with or apply to an answer to an actual question that somebody has asked. So instead of learning a range of meanings or a list of meanings and then trying to pick the right one, which is kind of mechanical and often doesn't work, and you need to be lucky and choose the right meaning. Instead of trying to learn meanings, you develop understanding of a card. And I'm going to give you an example of how this can be done so that you can then adapt the method for your own self. Because this is the thing, when you're reading cards, you want to be yourself. You don't want to have to learn to be somebody else or to copy somebody else's style. You want to be comfortable as you, so that you're natural and you speak and you talk about what you know about. And then it works. And then you're able to give valuable readings to other people. And I'd like to give you an example of how we can develop understanding. And I have to backtrack a bit, but I'll eventually get to the point. So I like to watch music videos. I like all sorts of kind of music, classical. I really like house and deep house and dance music and rock stuff. And anyway, so when I go to YouTube, I get this list of recommended videos, and some of them are musical. And one that I watched recently was Sinead O'Connor. I was never a big fan of Sinead, but I do like Nothing Compares to You. And this was a live version. I really like live versions of songs because it's not studio and it's not sanitized. It's real, so to speak. So she did this live version of Nothing Compares to You in Chile. And it's phenomenal performance. She was quite young at the time. And it was a really good performance, and you should watch it. I'll put a link in the description. So then at a certain point, after watching this video like 50 times, because I tend to do that, if there's something I like, I watch it over and over and over again. So then there was The Emperor's New Clothes, which I already knew from a long time ago. I kind of liked that song as well. So I'm watching The Emperor's New Clothes, and there's a bit in the song where Sinead sings, "They laugh because they're untouchable, not because what I said was wrong." And that reminded me of two things. One is when Sinead in late 80s, early 90s, she was on Saturday Night Live, and she did a solo version of War by Bob Marley. And then she held up a photograph of the Pope and tore it up. And this caused great outrage everywhere. How could she do this? And what does she mean? And the whole bit. And she was banned from Saturday Night Live and banned from TV. But as she's tearing up the photograph, she says, "Fight the real enemy." And people thought she was kind of mental. But events recently proved that she was right. So she sings, "They laugh because they're untouchable, not because what I said was wrong." And then maybe a month ago, the Archbishop of Australia was sent to jail for, I think, 3 or 4 years for sexual offences against children. And he was an archbishop. And the thing is that as he was going off to jail, politicians, broadcasters, media personalities all came out, even though he'd been charged with this crime. And he didn't appeal. even though I'd been charged, these big shots or politicians came out with messages of support for George Pell in his hour of need. And it's as if, it's just what Sinead said. They laugh because they're untouchable, not because what I said was wrong. And then I thought, wait a minute, the song's called The Emperor's New Clothes. So what does this tell me about the Emperor card? So instead of learning a list of meanings for the Emperor, I've got an idea and a picture and a set of circumstances and behavior that I can relate to the Emperor card. So maybe when the Emperor card comes up, you're dealing with a person who thinks they're untouchable, or who doesn't pay much attention to critiques or criticism or objections that other people have to them and what their decision is and what they've decided to do. So you can follow that, okay, and you've got the idea. So depending on the question, if the question's about a promotion and the Emperor comes up, then maybe it's describing the interviewers, that they think they're untouchable. And so even if you, the candidate, make good reasons about or give good answers to the questions that they ask you, they're maybe not going to be that interested if it doesn't already blend with what they already believe, right? They think they're untouchable. Whereas if it's a question about a relationship with somebody else and you're represented by the Emperor, you can find yourself saying to the questioner, in the light of the song and the lyrics, you can say something like, watch out that you don't assume that the other person doesn't have much to tell you, right? Because they can have an objection, or they put forth their point of view, but you don't take them that seriously. Whereas if the Emperor is reversed, maybe then you're on the receiving end, so that with the Emperor reversed, let's say it's for the future, you are going to give your point of view and nobody's going to pay attention. Or the people who ought to pay attention are not going to pay attention. So don't be surprised if you make good objections or make good points, but people don't take you seriously. And so I'm giving some examples here, but depending on the question and depending on your personal understanding of the lyrics of the song, and it's the Emperor upright or reversed, you're going to be able to speak naturally and using your own examples. Because maybe you say, there was this time when this happened to me, that I knew that something was going to go wrong, and I tried to tell them it wasn't going to work, and nobody paid any attention to me, and it went wrong. So you could give an example from your own experience or from your own life. Oh, when the lights went out, from your own life, that will make sense based on the question that was asked. Okay. I think I'm going to suddenly stop here, only because that light went out, and I don't know what the lighting is going to look like now. So that's it for the moment. If you've emailed me recently or in the last while and I haven't replied, sorry about that. I will be replying very soon, and I appreciate your patience. Okay? Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Yes, okay. This is now the Tarot Q&A number 18, and I've got a different camera. And so anyway, today, this one is called How to Be the Composer of Your Own Life, or something like that. So I've got maybe 6 points to make. So the beginning is the idea that we get back what we give out, right? So if you don't like, it's cause and effect. If you don't like the outcome or the effect, then there's no point in trying to change the effect directly. What you do instead is you figure out the cause, make some changes or improvements with the cause, and you're going to get a different outcome, a different effect. So sometimes we need to change our behavior. And so I'm thinking of somebody, let's say a young woman is looking for a husband or a man, or a long-term relationship. So she goes to bars and she's looking for somebody who wants Miss Right. And all she finds is half-drunk men who are looking for Miss Right now. Okay, you know, if you've been to bars, you know what that's like. So in this case, the solution or the change to the cause is straightforward. Stop going to bars. Find somewhere else to go. You know, take a class, learn a language, do something like that. That's changing the cause. You've got a better chance of meeting somebody because you haven't been that successful with the way that you've been trying. And I think that's the point, that if things aren't working out the way you want, then change something. So again, sometimes you can change your behavior, but sometimes you have to change how you think. So, sorry, this is the second time I made this, or the third time I made this, and it keeps, I'm out of focus. Well, I hope I'm in focus now. Okay, so I'm thinking that what we do is we need to learn how to compose rather than create. And this is partly because we're already creative. We've got Mars in a horoscope represents personal creative energy. And we've all got Mars somewhere. And it's the sign and the decanate and the house position and aspects. The condition of Mars shows your natural and correct for you way of expressing yourself creatively. So it's not like we have to learn to be creative. We already are. The trick is to actually cooperate with what Mars is like, and then you'll be creative, or you'll have something to show for your creativity. So I think the solution is more like learn to compose the different bits and pieces of your life into something that you kind of want. Although I'm going to change that later and talk about, instead of deciding what we want, we should think about what we're going for. Because want is kind of fixed. And once you get it, then what? You have to figure out something else, something new. But the idea of knowing what you're going for, the direction you're going, that's kind of more organic and I think works better. Okay, so we have to consider, or I think we have to consider, what is heaven? And I mentioned this a few videos ago. So it's easy to think, well, heaven is invisible. That's part of it. And it's maybe up in the sky. Like, this is what you're taught as children. Heaven's up there and it's huge. Or maybe some people teach you that you'll get there when you die. So, but heaven seems to be this enormous. So it's like heaven's this size and you're this size, right? So you're insignificant compared to heaven. But maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're actually huge and heaven is tiny. So there's a poet called William Blake. I don't know how many years ago he wrote, if you can see, I can't remember the quote now. If you can see a world in a grain of sand, right? Because the world is big and a grain of sand is tiny. Or if you can see eternity in a moment, because a moment comes and goes and it's gone, but eternity goes on forever. So it's a bit like he saw things the other way around, and maybe he had the right idea. Maybe heaven is tiny and you're the big character or the big part of it. Gravity, what's gravity? How big is gravity? I think is the question I want to ask. So gravity is invisible, just like heaven, and it's everywhere, just like heaven. And you can't see it or touch it or taste it or smell it, just like heaven. But how big is it? We know that if you knock a cup from a coffee table and it hits a carpet, it'll be okay. It probably won't break. But if you step off a roof and land on concrete, that's a different story. Because gravity, it's not that gravity has it in for you, but gravity, there's certain rules. And what you do is, in order to not suffer from gravity, you cooperate with it, you're obedient. You recognize it's bigger and stronger than you are, so you don't take it on and fight it. And maybe it's the same with heaven. So instead of fighting gravity or fighting heaven, what about if we work with heaven? And heaven can also can be understood as harmony. And harmony is an interesting word because the root is AR, which is an Indo-European root that means to arrange harmoniously. So you have art, A-R-T, right? So you're arranging different elements harmoniously into something that's pleasing, or something you deliberately arrange them into something that's disharmonious, which is another way of looking at things, or another way of doing things. So with heaven, we think it's up there in the sky and it's big. But also we have the idea that in heaven, there's a certain amount of evil. Let's say there's this amount of evil over here, and that needs to be balanced by an equivalent amount of good over here. And so good and evil balance each other out, or they oppose each other, and maybe they cancel each other out. So we've got the idea that there's evil and there's good. And good has to keep adjusting to evil, maybe. So let's say in our own lives, if we take the idea of good and evil, let's say you're insecure. And so you have to become confident, or if you're insecure, more confidence is the answer. But the thing is, if you're insecure and people tell you just be more confident, it's very difficult because you're insecure and you can't easily become confident overnight. And the other thing is, if you do develop your confidence and have more of it, and it's stronger or bigger than the insecurity within you, all it takes is one silly little thing to really bump up the insecurity again, and you're back to square one. So somehow getting rid of insecurity or trying to get rid of it isn't really a solution. And the same with evil. Instead of trying to get rid of evil, okay, let me get back to that. So think about what we're going for. Sorry, I've got the... okay, I mixed up these notes here. So, okay, so what are we going for? Think about music. And think about, we've all seen Star Wars, and we've probably all seen Jaws, right? So think about the theme tune or the theme introduction to Star Wars. And it's all big time, and the rebels are going to overcome the evil empire. And it's that kind of inspiration, well, maybe not inspirational, but that kind of march and power and authority, right? That kind of thing. Because the composer or the filmmakers wanted to create that kind of atmosphere. And so the music in TV shows, it's interesting to watch a TV show and just listen to the incidental music, because it tells you how to feel. Then you've got Jaws, the beginning of Jaws. And it's very different because it's more about, hey, there's something dangerous lurking here and we better watch out. It's a little bit scary. So depending on what they're going for, the composer is going for, that's what they play, or that's the kind of sounds that they make. So if you've ever played a piano or a guitar or something, you've got major chords and minor chords, but you don't get rid of all the minor chords. You don't try and eliminate them, or so, and just play major chords, because major chords are sort of confident, right? But you don't just play major chords, because minor chords have their place. If you've got major chords and then a minor or two, it can get you thinking about something else, or feeling nostalgic, or feeling sad, or feeling peaceful. And then you come back to major, which is maybe brings you back into reality or into normal everyday life. So with music, you don't try to eliminate notes you don't like, or banish them from the piano. Partly because they might be useful. I was going to mention Sugar Sugar by the Archies and The Little Fugue by Bach, and I'll put the links in the description. Partly because if you listen to them, you'll get the idea of music, one type of composition, because the Archies' Sugar Sugar was called bubblegum music, I think because it very quickly lost its flavour. Like, you listen to it a few times, you can't be bothered anymore, even though maybe the first listening it was quite catchy. But Bach's Little Fugue, it's played in an organ, and it's all by one person, because you've got two hands and 2 feet. Because with a pipe organ, you've got wooden pedals on the floor which control the bass notes, I think. But anyway, it's just a difference between one type of music and another, and one type of composition and another. So I'm getting to the point here. And the point, I think, is relax, as I should do instead. Okay, so I need to tell you about me when I was in my mid-20s. I was living in Bath at the time, in the southwest of England, and I would go up to London from time to time to go to a dentist to get root canal work and a crown. Teeth have been a problem. Anyway, so at the time in Bath, I was living a clean life. Not that I'm not at the moment, but I was trying to be, deep breathing and no alcohol and no meat and no chemicals and no medication either. So when I had the root canal, the dentist wanted to give me an injection, a painkiller. And I said to him, no, it's okay. I'll just breathe my way through this, because I thought it's a challenge. Do I really believe that breathing can solve problems? Okay, so I had the root canal, and so when the pain started, I found myself tensing up and kind of fighting the pain of the drills. But then I thought, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be breathing. So I relaxed and I began to concentrate on the breathing. And so the pain came, and it was a bit like, hey, I'm over here, said the pain. And I looked at it and said, oh yeah, this is what you look like. This is what pain is like. But I didn't mind. And I think it's because I was relaxed. And so I wasn't trying to eliminate pain or get rid of it or stop it, because it's the kind of thing that happens. But I was controlling my reaction to it and not stiffening up and tensing and trying to get rid of it because I didn't like it. Because I found that by relaxing, it's just pain. It's not as bad as you think it is if you relax and examine it. So I'm thinking, when you've got a problem or you're dealing with a situation that you don't like, instead of trying to run from it or shut it down or eliminate it or get rid of it, look at it, relax. First relax and breathe in and out a few times, and then look at it and examine it and wonder what you're going to do with it, or what effect it's having on you, or what's the best way to deal with it. But you're relaxing all the time. So maybe what you do is you think, what would a composer do with this particular problem? Or rather, what would you, as a composer of your own life, how are you going to incorporate or deal with this particular situation? Anyway, that's what I'm thinking at the moment. And let me know what you think if you want to. And it's kind of ongoing, this, about, because it'd be nice to figure out the best way to live. And I think this is part of it, not trying to reject things that happen anyway. Because, I mean, it's Kierkegaard. Life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. So if we can look at the things that happen to us as a mystery, I'll do what I can with it, but if I can't figure it out, then I can't figure it out. But we don't tense up and get tight and get scared. And I think it's all about relaxation, however you do it. Okay, so enough for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you in a few days, probably about the tarot, or more directly about the tarot. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, this is now the tarot question and answer number 12. And I've got some notes over here. The thing is, I like to do everything in one take. I don't like to make multiple or a number of different recordings and then put them all together. So I like to begin at the beginning and work all the way through. And so I've got some notes here just because I figured out in advance what it is that I want to say. So today is not particularly the tarot, but I wanted to give you something useful and practical that you can apply partly with tarot readings, but also with your life. And it began with, sorry, I'm looking at this thing here. Somebody left a comment from a couple of videos ago, and she's in the US and she's waiting for the government check to arrive, and she's all sorts of real difficulties. So she wondered what, she didn't really ask anything, but she made a comment about being patient. And I thought it would be nice to suggest something. And so I said, I'm not minimizing or making light of her situation, but what about picking a single card to know what to do next and then see what happens? And I had a reason for that. So I'll get to that in a minute. But after I sent the reply, I was thinking, what would the actual question be? Because words matter, and the words that we use are important. So from many years ago, like 20 odd years ago, Anthony Robbins did this talk, and he said at one point, and my wife told me this, he said at one point, if your question is, why am I such a loser? You're going to get 20 reasons why you're a loser. The problem is, it probably doesn't help you that much to know why you're such a loser. So instead of asking, why am I a loser, you ask, how can I be a winner? And then you get answers back, but at least you've got something you can work with that's going to take you in a better direction, or in a direction that you want or you're happy about. So the only thing about asking, how can I be a winner, is that winners imply losers. If you're going to win, then somebody else has to lose. So maybe asking, so the questioner who left a comment, she could ask, what kind of question could she ask that doesn't emphasize the fact that she has a problem? So instead of, how can I be a winner? Is there a better way? And then I wrote down, how can we all be winners? But somehow that's not that much better, because that means that there's a whole ton of losers as well. So she could ask, how do I get, okay, I need one card. How do I get out of the mess that I'm in? Or the problem with that, I think, is that you're identifying the mess that you're in and emphasizing the fact that you have difficulties. So asking, how can I get out of the difficulty, in some ways isn't the right question to ask. And when I was in my 20s, I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to smoke Gauloise and Gitane. And then I tried to give up multiple times. And if you've ever tried to give up smoking, you know what it's like. You spend all day, every day thinking, I'm not going to smoke, I'm not going to smoke. And it's in your mind all the time. And it's as if you're still a smoker, even if you're not smoking cigarettes. So what you do, the way to give up smoking is forget about it and do something else instead. And just move on. And I'm thinking, if you've got a problem, and if the questioner has a problem, you can't really solve it. You can't make the check arrive quicker, and you can't create a job if there are no jobs. So what do you do instead? You forget about it and do something else instead. Because if you do that, and let's say our question is, how can I make today better than yesterday? That, I think, is a good question. And if you do that every day, you're involved with an ongoing improvement of your life, because it's always today, right? And so if you're, how can I make today better than yesterday? And the answers that you get may be big and earth-shattering about the difference that you can make and what you can do today that makes a huge difference. But there can also be little things that make a difference as well. And I was remembering about when I finished university, and I couldn't think what to do. And I thought, okay, I'll become a high school teacher, like, people do when they can't think of anything else to do. So I was going to go to Jordan Hill, teach a college in Glasgow. And I had a part-time or a summer job as a security guard. And I had this patrol route to go on. So I was sitting in this truck in a rainy night about 2 a.m. And I thought, I don't want to go to Jordan Hill. I want to leave the country. So I'm going to look in the paper tomorrow, and I'm going to take the first job I can find anywhere in the world. I'm just going to take it and go. And so I looked in the London Times the next day, and they wanted history graduates, and I was a history graduate, to teach in Switzerland. They didn't want teachers to teach in Switzerland. They wanted graduates. So I qualified. So I applied and got the job, and one thing led to another. So the thing is, big results and life-changing things can happen when you do something small. Because all I did was think, okay, I'm going to get any job anywhere. And it made all the difference. So when the commentator who left the question or left the comment, little things that you do can produce huge and undreamt of results and set you on a whole different path. So rather than get a card that says, do this little thing, and think, well, it's just a little thing, it's not going to work. Instead of plunging ahead or imagining and defeating yourself by thinking, well, it's not going to work. Well, it's not if you decide it's not going to work. So I thought my thinking at the time to the question was, pick a card to know what to do next. But you want the answer to come from the part of you that knows what you need to do next. Because people are inventive and creative and produce things and do the impossible all the time. So why can't the commentator or the commenter? So I'm thinking, pick a card for what to do next, or how to make tomorrow better, or today better than yesterday. So that if you do that, how can I make today better than yesterday? You're always on a road to improvement. So you're thinking, rather than trying to fix what is in the past, you're moving forward on a continuously improving journey. Because every day you're doing one little thing or one big thing that's going to make today better than yesterday. So it's always better. So you're not trying to fix what went wrong and looking backwards. You're looking into the future, but also you're in the present. And I wrote down this thing. Shakespeare, he said at one point, what's past is prologue. So what has gone on is the introduction to what's going to happen in the future. So what's past isn't going to hold you down or beat you up or destroy you. What's past is a prologue. It's something to learn from, something to build on, something to reject if it's useless, so you can move into the future. So let's say, and I was thinking about this, so let's say the commentator or the commenter, it's what I do next, and she gets the Eight of Cups. Maybe she can't move away, because the Eight of Cups shows somebody walking away, but there's a five cups and 3 cups in the foreground, and they're neatly organized. So what can she do to make today better than yesterday? Or what can she do to improve her situation? The 3 cups and the 5 cups, get organized, clean, tidy. And it may not seem like much, but it changes you a little bit. And that's important. Or else, let's say you get the three of Swords, which has got the rain and the heart and the swords through it. What do? Maybe, you personally can come up with a different suggestion for the Eight of Cups, and the three of Swords. But with the Three of Swords, I thought, cry, because sometimes you're holding it all in and it's going nowhere. But if you cry and sob uncontrollably, you let it out and it's refreshing. So if the questioner, whoever it happens to be, gets the Three of Swords and you have a quick cry or a long cry, then when you start looking at your situation again, you're refreshed. So it's not the same person looking ahead as the one who was looking behind. In the 1960s, people used to say, I used to say, you get back what you give out. Nowadays, it's the law of attraction and it's complicated, but back then it was simple. You get back what you give out. So if you're not happy with what life is giving you, with what's coming back, start giving out something different. And that's going to change what you get back, because you get back what you give out. So if our questioner with the Eight of Cups tidied up or organized or went through stuff they've been meaning to do that they've been avoiding, then they're going to get back something different, because they're giving out something different. They're going to get something different back. So if you cry from the Three of Swords, it's refreshing. So it's a slightly different you who is sending out to the universe or the cosmos or whatever, or just asking your inner being for something better. Okay. I was going to stop at this point, but I can't stop. So in the Lover's card, I'll try this. In the Lover's card, you've got, in the Rider deck, you've got Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and you've got the serpent, and you've got the tree, and you've got the fruit, the forbidden fruit. So there's 2 trees in the Garden of Eden. There's the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. And Adam and Eve are told, you can eat from the tree of life and live forever, or you can eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and you'll die. So they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they were cast out of Eden, and then they had Cain and Abel, and then one thing led to another, and it's a kind of catalogue of disasters and problems after that. So last summer and autumn, I think it was, I was interested in Adam and Eve and what it might mean, and I came across Jordan Peterson's lectures on, I think it's Maps of Meaning, the book that he wrote. If you hate Jordan Peterson, that's okay. He's a Gemini. And what's good about him, among other things, is he's done all the research, or he's done a lot of research, and he talks about it, and he saves you 20 years of reading. So his summaries are well informed, and his ideas are quite interesting as well. So he talks interestingly about the Bible. And okay, sorry, I'm looking at this thing. What did I write? Oh yeah, okay, so the tree of knowledge and good and evil. And it occurred to me partway through listening to Jordan talk, like hours into his videos, that he's focusing on what happened to Adam and Eve after they were cast out of the Garden of Eden. But he completely ignores the fact that they were told, don't eat from that tree, eat from the tree of life. So the tree of life is like unity, and the tree of knowledge and good and evil is two. So it seems to me we should eat from the tree of life and not from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So if you're thinking of doing something, you say to yourself, am I going to have more life because of what I do? In which case, do it. If it's not going to give you more life, and you know what you mean by life, then don't do it. Because there's a line in Bob Dylan, he not busy being born is a busy dying. So if what you're about to do or what you're planning or what you're doing is you being born and growing and developing and learning, then it's a good thing. But if it's not that type of activity, then don't do it. Because what I think we're supposed to do is choose what will give us more life and not what will give us less death. Because the problem with the tree of knowledge of good and evil is they have the mistaken idea that in order to know what life is, you've got to know what the opposite is. You've got to know what death is. So when you know what death is, you can understand life. Or when you know what bad is, you can understand good. And that's why we have to have war and disease and problems, so that we can understand and learn what the opposite is. And that's just not true. Because we're supposed to do the good, and we know what the good is. We don't need to know what the bad is so that we can understand what the good is. So, can't read that. So, we know what life is. We don't need to know what death is. So I'm saying stay away from the knowledge of good and evil. And it's a bit like, and I'm sort of losing my train of thought here, but I'll maybe come back to it. Or if you've got questions, maybe I can give my explanation of a bit more of it. But I think the point is, we know that 2 and 2 is 4. We know what's right, or what we should do that's right for us. And if we learn something from the experience, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. We learn from it. That's valuable. So we know that 2 plus 2 is 4. We don't need to know that 2 plus 2 is not 5, and it's not 6, and it's not 7. You don't need to. We don't need to know what something isn't in order to know what it is, because we know what life is and what life-giving means for us. And we know what to do. We should trust ourselves. And to finish up, I was remembering Dazed and Confused, the movie with Matthew McConaughey and lots of other people. And on the football field, he says, livin, Livin. Okay. I don't know what you'll think of all this. So I'll leave it with you, and next time we'll do the last 3 cards in the horoscope spread. So anyway, thank you very much for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you in a couple of days. Okay, bye-bye.